Dear Christoph, I have more news. I hear that Mr. Beethoven feels that he is not appreciated in Vienna. He almost agreed to perform his Ninth Symphony in Berlin. Imagine that, Vienna's greatest composer taking his symphony somewhere else. But so many people begged him to change his mind that, luckily, he did. And other news, the orchestra members are complaining about their parts. The bassists say that their instruments aren't nimble enough for Mr. Beethoven's quick notes. The sopranos say their notes are just too high. All over Vienna, the players are struggling with their tasks. Mr. Beethoven will conduct with another conductor, one who can hear, conducting beside him. And amid these great events, little gatekeeper, how is life at home? Do your twin sisters still torment you with their terrible shouts? And is there, as I have heard from your mother, a steady stream of great musicians up and down your stairs? How I wish I could be there. And most important, will my nephew still remember his doting uncle when his uncle comes to visit soon?
Dear Uncle, I wish that you could visit right away. Mother says you would enjoy the goings-on. Caroline says whenever the sopranos come up the stairs, Mr. Beethoven rushes like a schoolboy to change his coat. He won't let her make the coffee for them. It must be perfect, with exactly 60 beans for every cup. He counts the beans himself. But now, good news! Today I was standing on the upstairs landing when my favorite soprano came by to get tickets for the concert. At least she is now my favorite. After she had written her request in Mr. Beethoven's book, she wrote another one and then handed him the book and winked at me. He read her words and said, "Certainly, the boy and his mother will have tickets as well. And so Mother and I will be going to the symphony." We went upstairs to thank him. I wrote, "Thank you," as neatly as I could. Uncle, I hope you will like the sound of screaming, because you will hear some when you visit. The twins are teething, and if they are no longer teething, they will have thought of something else. Dear Uncle, Mr. Beethoven's moods these past few days are fierce. Caroline, his housekeeper, is going to leave to marry the baker next door. She told Mr. Beethoven tonight, and he became very angry because the symphony is just 2 weeks away. He picked up an egg and threw it at him. She told Mother he'll be lucky if the baker doesn't come over and finish him off. Then Mr. Schindler came rushing down the stairs like a scalded cat. The new coat they ordered for Mr. Beethoven won't be ready for the concert in time. He tried to talk to Mr. Beethoven about it, but Mr. Schindler said the master is in no mood for details. And I have not helped matters. Today, I was in his room, and by mistake, I brushed some papers on his desk. They fluttered to the floor. Mr. Schindler gasped. Mr. Beethoven had spent the morning putting them in order. Mr. Beethoven said, "And so now I must do work again I have already done." You see, just when life was getting better, I have ruined things again.
Dear Christoph, I've read your letter several times. Mr. Beethoven is famous for his temper, but his moods are not your fault. Try to imagine how frustrating his life must be. Imagine how lonely to hear no voices. Imagine hearing no birds sing, no wind in the trees, no pealing of bells. Imagine he hears no music, not even his own. So, Mr. Beethoven has a great temper. How could he not? But if you listen to his music, you will hear that his heart is great as well, too great to be angry for long at an innocent boy.
Dear Uncle, Mr. Beethoven has forgotten the incident with the papers. He squeezed my shoulder in a friendly way when he passed me in the hall this afternoon. Now the house is quiet, and I am alone. I'm writing by candlelight in my room. The concert is tomorrow night, and so of course I cannot sleep. I think of Mr. Beethoven alone upstairs. I have not heard him stir for quite some time. I wonder what he's thinking about. Perhaps he is hearing something beautiful in his head. Dear Uncle, there he was, Mr. Beethoven, up there on the stage, waving his arms as I've seen him so many times upstairs. And there were the singers. I had seen them so many times too, tramping up and down their stairs. But they were so beautiful now, up there in the light of the stage. It was hours long, but the concert seemed over before it started. To think that he had heard this in his head. All of us were standing and cheering and clapping and waving scarves and shouting and trying to make Mr. Beethoven hear us. He didn't even know to turn around until one of the sopranos took his sleeve. She turned him to face the crowd. 4 times the audience began to clap and cheer again. Up there on the stage, Mr. Beethoven bowed and bowed and bowed again.